Good afternoon and welcome back to the workbench. Today we have something different. A television here, an LED television. It's a Veon VN3938 LED. And it doesn't work, of course, which is why it's here. So I'm going to have a look at it and hopefully we can get it working. This is from a local community centre which I volunteer at sometimes, and they were using it yesterday and they said it just switched off, just went black, and when they try to turn it back on again the power LED just flashes and it doesn't do anything else. So I offered to have a look at it for them and see if I could figure it out. I'm not going to put too much effort into it. Obviously this is be doing it for free, I guess, so if the cost is above like $25 or something to fix it, I probably won't bother. I'll just suggest they go to a second-hand shop and buy another one. But going by the way that the light is flashing, I do have a suspicion that it could be a quite easy fault to fix, so hopefully I'm correct and hopefully that's what'll happen. So I'll just plug it in and we'll just see. Hopefully that'll show up. I don't know if it'll show up on this. Maybe I'll close this here, plug this in, and we can see if you can see what happens. So put this in there and, well, yeah, it's not very obvious, is it? There you go, you can see that. Barely, I guess, in the darkened room. But you can see the power LED is just flashing. I don't know if the camera's picking it up properly, because it's probably flashing quite close to the frame rate of the actual camera, obviously, but yeah, that's definitely what it's doing. You can see nothing comes up on the screen, nothing tries to come up on the screen. The power LED is just power cycling, which to me tells me that there is probably, well, tells me one of two things. The power supply is either faulty, or there's a fault somewhere else that's causing the power supply to power cycle. Because that's typically how that works. It's going into some protection mode. It's either detecting over current, over voltage, or some other problem, or it could have a bad controller, or it's actually detecting a short circuit on some rail and it's shutting down, then restarting and trying again, and you just get this retrying over and over. So it could be as simple as a shorted diode somewhere or a shorted regulator on the main board. It could be as complicated as a faulty controller IC in the power supply itself. Hopefully not, because those are usually quite difficult to get, and even though they may only be like $5 or something, it usually takes like a week or more to order them from somewhere. Sometimes you can only get them from China, so it takes a month. So yeah, hopefully it's not that, but we'll see anyway. Right, so I've just turned it around and having a look at the back here to see how the screws go, how the stand goes. Unfortunately, like most of these really cheap TVs, basically the panel is kind of the chassis now, and the case is basically just a bit of plastic sort of screwed onto it, and the stand screws in through that, so it's probably unlikely that I can take the back off separately and keep it standing up. This one, it looks like you've got screws around the outside here, and then the stand goes on top of this, so most likely it's a case of having to take the stand off, having to take all these screws off, take the back panel off when you're having the thing lying down flat, and then working on it that way, which is annoying, but oh well, that's just the way they've mostly gone these days. Again, for sort of cheapness and thinness, they've done it that way, which I guess from a efficiency point of view of doing that is logical, but for servicing it makes it a bit more annoying. So you do have to have enough space to actually lie the thing down flat in a way that's not going to damage the panel, and also give you enough space to still work on it and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, anyway, I mean, it kind of looks, you have these lines around here that go up, and it looks as if you could take off this as a separate panel, but I don't think so. I think they've just molded the plastic to make it look like that, rather than actually being like that physically. So that's annoying. The only thing that looks separate is the power cord inlet. It's got two screws there, and I imagine that can come out separately, but there's probably no point in taking that out separately until you actually take the back off. to unplug it from the inside, because yeah, it's probably going to plug onto the main board with some kind of little socket. And again, we have this sort of thing here that looks like a separate panel, but is probably not. But we'll find out. The power supply is obviously going to be around this side, because that's where the power cord comes in, and it's the opposite side to the main board, which is clearly over the other way, because that's where all the inputs are. Yeah, we're just trying to see if this is actually in separate pieces, or if they've done this as a whole thing. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be doing anything. I'd say this is just a fake line that just is meant to look cool or something. Notice that this screw is longer, the bottom one's longer, this one is shorter. If anyone needs to know that. Again, I'll set these in a pattern that corresponds with where the screw holes are on the chassis, so that it is obvious which one goes which when you go to put it back again. But anyway, I'll just lie this thing down, get the back off, and then we'll have a look inside and see what's going on. It looks like I've got just enough space to get this thing open on here, which is lucky. So I'm going to take the stand off first, because usually that goes on over the top of everything else. Sometimes you can get fortunate enough to screw the stand back on afterwards, even with the back off, so that you're able to work on the thing upright, which is often useful. Let's just see, yeah, that comes on as a separate thing. And yeah, and we've got all these, so once again, paying attention to the screw lengths, because they are going to be different around the outside in different places, usually. And sometimes, obviously, if you get the length wrong when you're putting it back together, you may in fact drive a long screw right through the back of the panel and crack it, especially on these really slim designs, so that's not desirable. So obviously, pay attention to that and make sure that doesn't happen. So just something interesting here to look at. Taking this out, it does come out, and there is a plug which you can disconnect for the input, but the earth wire is still connected, probably screwed into the chassis somewhere. So I'm not entirely sure what the point of that is. Yeah, it's kind of strange. Yeah, why? Doesn't make anything easier, really, as far as I can tell. Anyway, I suppose they had some reason of doing it. Alright, so it looks to get this off, you've got to stick a card in, like this, get it up vertically underneath the thing, and then run it along the side. I've already done this, so it's obviously going really quickly, but there are clips up there that will snap open, and you bring that along like this, and do that around the sides as well. A bit of a pain, but it works. Alright, so once you've got the back off, you've got to do some extra stuff. You've got to unplug a little wire here, this cable there. That just goes up behind this power switch on a separate board that connects to, I don't know what, I guess it's the buttons here, the side buttons on the side. Then you've got the mains wiring, so you can unplug, well, you can unplug the cable from this connector here, but I think it makes more sense to unscrew the whole thing and then bring it through the hole. And then we've got, oh wait, we've got the power button, of course, still on there, so can I unplug that? No. Okay, so I'm going to have to unplug that from the main board, and then disconnect it from this cable tie, and then pull that up there, it looks like. But that's okay, so there's a cable tie there. Seems part of a stick-on thing, so that's going to be annoying. Yeah, if I cut that it'll shorten it, so what I might do is just undo that with a pin, possibly. I'll just take the power cable off so it's not in the way. It's just kind of annoying there. Alright, now we got this here. Anyway, there's a power supply. Very low profile. You can see the transformers are even sunk down into little cutouts in the board. Don't know who the OEM for this. It says it's a Veon, but I think it's probably something else. See, the power supply is branded Leaky. The main board doesn't have any name on it, I can see, but I'll have a look afterwards. But yeah, it's got to deal with that cable tie. You could cut it, but it might be a bit short, although it's not exactly tight, so I probably could cut it if I wanted. But if you push the little clip down with a pin or something, you can usually open them up and get them to slide straight out. So I'll probably just do that because that'll be easier to put it back together again. Alright, so real quickly I'm just going to try the most obvious and stupid thing first, which is to check all these big diodes here and just see if any of them are shorted, because that would be one of my first suspicions. Nope, that one seems alright. These ones are probably all in parallel too. They put two in parallel to get a higher power, but the problem with that is that invariably one of them ends up sharing more of the power, and so you usually get the case where one of them fails because it just gets hotter and hotter than the other one. Look at that. Something's not happy on that one, is it? Nope. The one next to it, you can hear that beeping too, so we've got probably, let's check these ones. That's not doing anything. Yeah. Nothing there. So these ones are suspect. Got a nice big that's normal. Yeah, so all those other ones test. Well, hang on, there's a couple more here, but that's fine. That's probably fine. These are probably snubber diodes for switching transistors down there, but these ones look very suspicious. I mean, that should not be. That's reading a dead short. That's probably not correct. So I'm just going to unplug these cables here, because it could be something on the main board possibly. Can I get those out? Yeah. They're just pretty tight. Let's just unplug those cables there and see if it changes at all. Nope, we still got a short, so quite possibly, yeah, some rail, whatever rail that is, I don't know, it's probably not the 5V standby because otherwise the LED wouldn't come on at all. But that could be like the 12V or something, or 24. There's nothing marked down here exactly what. But yeah, I'll take the power supply out and we'll have a look at these diodes, find out where that goes, and probably desolder one of those and just see. But would not be surprised if one of these two diodes, or maybe even both, but probably just one. They're probably both in parallel and probably one of them has failed. And yeah, that could be quite likely all it is. Like I said, it's quite common with these cheaper sets that use diodes in parallel. They're quite likely in parallel, and yeah, one of them generally takes more of the current, and over time it just fails first. Alright, so I've got the board completely disconnected from everything. I'll just check these again to make sure it is isolated to this board. Yep, we've still got the short across those diodes, so it's definitely isolated to the power supply. Whatever's going on there is not normal. That's definitely one of the parts of troubleshooting, is to take a divide and conquer approach. divide and conquer. You want to try and find out where the location is. We know it's most likely not on the main board, it's most likely here. These things are showing a problem, so annoyingly they've got this silly design of putting this black plastic sheet on, which I suppose is good for insulation, but it's annoying because you have to try and get it off. But it just uses little push pins, I think. So if you get a pair of pliers, and just squeeze the push pins down like this. It's better if you've got pliers with grips on them, but there we go. Just sort of squeeze it like that and push it through. There's no need to cut them off or anything, and obviously that's dangerous because you'd lose the insulator sheet if you ripped it off or anything, and that has to be there for safety, so you want to take that off non-destructively. So there we go. You can see the power transformers are all got little cutouts to keep them nice and thin, low profile. It's kind of cool. Yeah, looks like we've got some transistors or regulators or something down here too, so it's possible maybe one of those could be shorted even. But it's also quite likely the diode itself. So yeah, which one was it? It was this pair here. Yeah, so that pair, yeah, they're both definitely in parallel, you can see. Most of these are, I think, or just about all of them. Comes straight off this winding there, goes here, and it runs to a couple of things here. And then where does it go to? Goes to one of these, goes to Q9 it looks like, through a filter here. Sorry you can't see this very well, but it goes to this transistor or whatever this is. It's an ME45P04. It's designated Q9, it could be a MOSFET maybe. So it could be bad as well possibly, and then that goes to what is labelled 24 volts output here. So yeah, 24 volts, that's probably for the what would that be for? And the backlight's obviously a separate thing, that's up here. 24 volts could be for the tuner, I think. Possibly, I think they use a higher voltage. Down here we got 5 volt standby, 5 volt and 12, but it doesn't look like that's the problem. It looks like it's this one, the 24 volt. The 24 volt could also power the backlight driver circuitry as well, possibly, but that also may be a separate rail. It probably wouldn't be marked because it's all internal to the board, so probably yeah, but anyway, I'll just desolder these two diodes and just check them out of circuit, and we'll see if they're the problems or if it could be that that transistor there. Alright, so I've just lifted one end of these diodes each. I'm just going to test them out of circuit and see what we get. So that one's measuring 230 millivolts, which is normal for a Schottky diode. Let's see what the other one measures. Look at that, dead shorted. So this one here on the left is obviously bad, and this one on the right is still good. I'll just check to make sure there's no short still on the board. Nope. Capacitor just charging up there, the output capacitors, you see. Can I get that in the shot? Kind of. Let's see, that's the bad one, shows 0.5 millivolts. If I measure to the pad underneath, we get climbing digits showing these capacitors here charging up these output ones. So yeah, that diode's bad. Makes sense to replace both of them at once to make sure they're the same, because I don't know how easy it will be to get that exact number. If I want to repair this today, I'll have to go to JCar, I guess. They may not have the exact same one, but they probably have something that's close enough. Alright, so I just went and got these from JCar. It's FR607, it's a 6 amp 1000 volt, whereas the originals were 5 amp 200 volts. It's slightly better in that respect, but also slightly slower, probably, so yeah, that shouldn't be a problem though, I guess, given the fact this shouldn't be running near the maximum current. If it was running like quite high, then you'd want to look into that and make sure that it was suitable. But the original diode data sheet didn't even give values for recovery time, so I can't actually be sure that these would be any worse anyway. So because they are fast diodes, FR, and they are higher current and higher voltage. So yeah, I did have some SB560s, which are 5 amp 60 volts, but given it's a 24 volt rail, I didn't want to run 60 volt ones on there, especially when the originals were 200. So I figured it would make more sense to get these, and these are the easiest ones I could get anyway. But first of all, I'm just going to try and match them up. It's a good thing I could only buy a pack of 10 anyway, so I'll do a check the forward voltage on these and find the two that are the closest. This is probably not a very good way of matching them, to be honest. You'd want to match them under load, but I don't have a component analyzer to do that. Alright, so I'm just about to put the new diodes in. I've got two that are pretty closely matched and pretty low, one of the lowest values of the lot. I'm just going to bend the leads and I'll measure that against there, so it'll bend about here. But what I want to note is that when I bend these, I'm going to make a little kink in the bottom, just like these original ones were. You see how they've got a little sort of kink? That's for thermal expansion there, so that when the diode heats up, the lead will kind of bend rather than breaking the solder joint. So that's important to make sure you do that. So I'm just going to bend a little thing there like that, just to copy what they've done. Yeah, so just make sure you do that. There are other ways you can do it. You can also curl the legs around in a sort of spiral and then put it down, but these would be too sort of thick and short to do that with, so just a little bend like that is pretty good. So yeah, I'll just do that and then I'll put them in, obviously. Alright, so we'll just solder these in here. Make sure I heat that up properly, because this is quite a big pad to solder onto and they've got no thermal relief for the pads there, which makes sense because it's probably a higher current thing. And then I've just got them leant over like this to clear the clearance for the thickness of the board. So just have them over there like that. That should work fine. Obviously it doesn't matter that these leads are next to each other because they connect to the same pad anyway, so they're not, even if they're shorted out against each other, it wouldn't matter because they're the same electrical connection underneath on the circuit board, so it's irrelevant. I wouldn't want to move it that way because then it might short onto this diode over here, so I've had to put them both this way, but that should work just fine. And just trim the leads off. Right, so put those in there. I've just put that back on, the cover there, just clip them back in, just push the pins back in until they clip through the holes, and now we can put this back on here. So I'm just going to put this back together nice and quickly. And we'll see what happens. It should work, assuming there's no other problem. I can't imagine that there are. Like I said, these parallel diode pairs failing are kind of common on these cheaper TVs, so yeah. that's probably the only thing wrong with it. Obviously, like I said, I replaced both diodes, even though one of them is still okay, because they won't be matched, and one of them will end up sharing more current, so it's not so good. And then that one will fail and short out again in short order, just like what happened here. It may only last like a few months or less or something if you did that, so you got to make sure that they're all matched together and everything's fine. It's annoying to get the power in here, so I might screw the stand back on. The good thing with this is you can actually screw the stand back on here. So I'll screw the stand back on, we'll set it up, and I should be able to power it up and test it, see if it works, without having to put the back on and mess around with all that straight away. And then we'll see if it goes, but I'm pretty sure it will. Alright, so I've got the power supply reconnected, I've got the thing plugged back in, got the cases off, but you know, the power cord's connected through the button at the bottom of the case, so it just has to sit there like that. But just a quick test to see if it goes. Just plug it in and see what happens. The light is red, it's not flashing, that's a good start. The buttons aren't plugged in, so let's just see what that does. The light turns green! Haha! That's good. Let's see if there's anything else happen though. We have backlight, we have a display. Look at that. And we got a no signal thing. So there we go, it works. As I thought, it's just those diodes that were bad. So yeah, I should just be able to stick it back together and see what happens. Does that work? Yeah, it works. Works good. Yeah, again, I don't know how well suited these new diodes are. They should be good enough. I got them at JCar, that was easy to get. I couldn't find any decent ones at RS Components, which might have had next day delivery. The only thing they had was on back order for like 3 weeks or something, so not very useful. And if I'd gone to Farnell, I would have had to pay a lot of shipping and everything, and eBay of course probably would have had it, but would have taken a month to get here, so not very useful. So these should work, I think, most likely. If they don't, I mean, if it fails again, I'll look into changing them for something else, but I would say most likely it'll be fine. We'll find out anyway in the next few weeks, I suppose, or months. But yeah, here we go. Just a one shorted diode. This one here, I think. That one there. One shorted diode has taken the whole thing down, and replacing those, both of them. Obviously it wouldn't do to replace, you know, one of these and leave one of the originals there, because they'd be completely unmatched, and one of them would end up taking most of the current and failing pretty quickly. So you got to make sure you replace both if you do find one of those, unless you have the exact one. But even then, it would probably be best to get a few and try and match them anyway. This is not a great design, but yeah, you can also replace the whole thing with, you know, a high power diode, a single diode on like a T220 package, and put a heatsink on it maybe if you want as well. That's one option, but I couldn't find any again that would have been easy to get. So, but for reliability and longevity, that's probably the best option, is to do that. Replace it with a single diode, because then you don't have that current imbalance through two different diodes and all that issue. But yeah, it seems to work now, so that's good. That's good, excellent. There we go. So I'll just maybe even have time to take this back. I'm not sure. We'll find out. Unless I have to take it back tomorrow, but maybe I can do it today. Who knows? Anyway, hope that was interesting. Hope that was useful. If you've got a flickering power light that's just pulsing constantly like that, real fast, it could quite possibly be just a shorted diode. And even if it's not pulsing, because if the shorted diode's on the 5V standby, it won't do anything, but or maybe not, you never know. But anyway, yeah, that's one symptom of that kind of thing, power cycling. Or you can measure the voltage rails, and if they're flashing, you know, going up and down. If you had an oscilloscope, it'd show a waveform of the voltage going like that rather than being DC. So yeah, anyway, that seems good. So hopefully that was useful, hopefully that was interesting. I'll see you next time.